Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I get to simplify the marketing and the mindset necessary so chiropractors, you, can make more money, have more impact, and bring a whole bunch more joy into your practice and your personal life as well. Now, if you're looking for easily actionable and effective strategies for you to better connect with your patients and to explain chiropractic, then today's episode is for you. My guest on the show today is Dr. Don MacDonald, an amazing Canadian chiropractor. Now, Don and his wife Brandi are known literally around the world for helping to bring chiropractic communication and practice models into the 21st century. And in today's episode, Don shares what he's learnt setting up his practice, I think for the third time. And he actually explains he thinks now, in the middle of the pandemic, why it's absolutely the best time for you to be setting up a new practice, whether it be expanding space, moving to somewhere bigger, or perhaps just starting over again. We also talk about how Don uses things like posture and function and stress to communicate the chiropractic message. And we have a chat about the Polyvagal theories and how these are going to be useful in explaining the chiropractic model going forwards. All right, let's go and chat with Don. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast, where we guide natural health and wellness experts through the pitfalls of marketing. Each episode, you'll learn simple, effective, easily actionable, and heart-centered marketing strategies. And here's your host, Angus Pyke.
Don MacDonald, welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing amazing. How are you doing? It's been a long time since we've been able to hang out.
It has been a long time. I'm doing great. I do have significant shirt or t-shirt envy at the moment. So for those of you that are watching the video version of this, I like it. Yes. Our last time hanging out, was it probably San Francisco? I don't know that I have seen you since then.
Actually, we only saw it, and this was the funniest thing ever. We ran into each other in Hawaii. Do you remember that? That was
yes.
Like 5 years ago.
Yes.
Like we were random on the same holiday, in the same hotel, in the same lobby, on the same moment.
Yes.
And that was for my 45th birthday. So that was like 5 years ago that we went to Hawaii. It was in Honolulu. So we never got to hang out too much. We got to say hi, but the last time we hung out was in San Francisco.
No, I had forgotten about that. In fact, I've forgotten about that in this context now, but recently I was talking, Lauren and I, knowing that this was coming up, and she reminded me of it then, which, man, how is that too, from, a Canadian and an Aussie randomly meeting in the same hotel lobby in Hawaii as well. But
like, even when you try to organize it, you probably couldn't organize it that good, even if you tried. Like, that's funny.
No, definitely not. Buddy, I'm super excited today. You have recently just built a beautiful brand new practice. I'm really excited talking about that and the process that went into that and the great work that you do in your community. But for our listeners that might not know a little bit about who you are, what you do, your background, do you want to give them just a thumbnail, and then we'll jump into some really exciting things today?
Yeah, great. My name's Dr. Don MacDonald. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We're just talking about we're going into our winter up here, so I was just raking leaves, getting ready for the snowfall to come, and get all ready to get all frozen for another 6 months. But I've been graduated from Palmer College of Chiropractic in 1997. And opened a practice with my sister for 5 years. Then my wife, Brandi MacDonald, joined me. So often when we travel, because Brandi speaks all over the world before COVID, and I would always say I'm Brandi MacDonald's husband. So that would be how I'd be introduced. But I've been in practice in Edmonton, Alberta for like about 23 years. I've done some leadership stints as president of the Edmonton Chiropractic Society and done some stuff like that. And then lately, we've been working together. We built a brand new practice. We were funny because we were on the edge where we were thinking of possibly moving to British Columbia, which is the province next to us, because the winters aren't as harsh, and we do love golf. Hence the golf shirt. That's why these are the nice golf shirts. But then COVID happened, and we were like, there are a lot of stuff that we couldn't do, and so we were like, what can we do? And this is probably the best time in the history of the time I've been in practice to open a new practice, because there's tons of places for lease. You can get a really good price. We almost doubled the size of our practice for almost like probably 60% less rent than we were paying before, and able to build it right out and build our ideal practice. And so we decided we'll stick it out in Edmonton for another 6 years, and then we'll maybe go to BC. But who knows? Like the way the world changes, we're just adapting, but we're just trying to do the things that we can do and still keep things exciting.
So is this the third incarnation of the practice that you've kind of rebuilt, or the second?
Well, I was with my sister at the very beginning, and we had a little spot, and
Yes.
and then we moved to a bigger spot together,
Mm.
and then I went out on my own. And the funny thing, it's a great Australia story, is I went on my own. So we went from, and I know you guys are in square meters and we're in square feet, but we had like a 2,700 square foot office, and then we moved to this little office, and it was only 750 square feet, and so. And we were only in there for probably about 6 months. And then Brandi we went to Melbourne she spoke at the Parker in Melbourne in 2009. And it was funny because in my mind, I was like, I can't practice in this small of a space. And so I was like, I had this limiting beliefs around this, and it was just a little bit too squishy, and I didn't feel comfortable. And then we went to Melbourne, and we toured through about 2 or 3 different offices, and we hung out with Dr. Martin Harvey, and he has, I think in Canadian terms, about 1,000 square feet, and they have three chiropractors working out of it all the time,
Yes.
and they're just doing fine. And it actually reframed my mind, and I'm like, actually, yeah, I can probably do this. And so we became an office of efficiency, which worked just fine. It never was our dream practice. It's just we moved there and it was already built out, so we just kind of made it work. And it wasn't until COVID, where you had to do social distancing and try to limit the amount of people in the practice at one time, that we've had to deal with for the last 18 months, that the small space, the cozy space, was no longer convenient. And now we basically doubled the size, and we've only been in for about a month. And so this is the first that me and Brandi have been able to like design an office from basically a square box. And it's just, I was just saying before we went live, it is crazy the difference in energy. Like just being in there and feeling just the energy of creating something right from scratch is kind of revigorating for this time on our planet. So it's pretty cool to kind of increase the excitement level in practice when the whole world's kind of like gone crazy. So
it does feel like that. So in wanting to start and rebuild this practice, what's different other than the size of the space? When you had a blank canvas with you and Brandi, what was on your wish list that you put into this office that wasn't there beforehand?
You know what? I think everything some of it was size. Just little things, like for me, for comfort zone, was noise. And we'll get into the Polyvagal Theory a little bit later too. But it's funny because the more we've been diving into this, and me and Brandi are going to be doing a program with them coming up, which will be pretty exciting into 2022. But we're dealing with a lot of people that are under a lot of stress, and we're trying to dial down those sympathetics, and noise is actually a big factor in not being able to dial down the stress response. And I don't know if it's just me being in practice longer, but I'm also getting a little bit more sensitive to noise. So when we practice sort of semi-open concept. So we always had just a slight divider wall, more of just a visual divider from one side of the room to the next. I did initially practice full open concept, but it was just, I like to have a little bit of a divider. And you liked it at first because you like the energy as you're going your practice, and you like the people to see families getting adjusted and children getting adjusted, and people were learning and getting educated all in a group. But just lately, like in my practice, it got more distracting because I've been really focusing more on connecting with each person, because we're in a world of disconnect, and it's more of a challenge if it's noisier. And so I went from initially having carpet in my adjusting suite to having hardwood floor in my adjusting suite, but it's a lot more echoey. And I went back to carpet, and I put like some really nice underlay padding in there, so it just feels like you're kind of like because you're standing all day walking back and forth. And so I kind of made my adjusting suite kind of like a living room, and the lighting's all different, and the energy's different, and the colors are all like calmer. And we did have a challenge when we first moved in there, because we have some really high ceilings, so we had a lot of echo problems, which that was the whole thing I was trying to get away with, was the noise. And so I basically got my self-degree in facility acoustics in the last couple of weeks, and we've had baffling on the ceiling and baffling on the sides, and then we put in some throw rug carpets, and so now it just really has a really good noise energy to it. Which just kind of goes along with what we're trying to do, is just get people more into that safe state of ease, where that's all the magic happens.
And so if we're talking about kind of stressing the nerve system, it is just things like echo and background sound and those kind of things, that's enough to trigger, and perhaps if a nervous system's already a little wired, that's enough to continue to feed into that?
Yeah, well, I would say it's enough to prevent or to decrease your benefit of the adjustment. Like,
Yes.
because I'm always thinking of the adjustment. Basically, it's like a reset where we're trying to we're just trying to reset, dial it back down. And if we have an area of less noise, it just dials down better.
Yes.
So I think everything becomes more effective. That's why we find in chiropractic, if someone's under care enough and we create, initially you adjust someone, they get into an immediate state of ease. And then if they stay under care long enough, we sustain that state of ease.
Yes.
Or in the polyvagal theory, they'll call it a state of safety. That's when we become more ventral vagal. And then that's where the healing process that's where the magic happens, where I don't think chiropractic's been able to explain the magic very good in the past.
Oh, I look forward to getting to that in a couple of moments. So space was a big thing in the new practice, and then also sound. What else was important for you in the new practice?
We just wanted a little bit more room for our CAs, because we were really on top of each other, and our front was pretty compact. So like we like to have them have a little bit of space. And we also have a little room behind the front desk now where they got their own little space where we didn't have little spaces before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have these little areas. And the other thing too, and it is just kind of the way our office was set up before, is I had my open adjusting suite, and then the bathroom was like kind of right across the hallway. And so if people are going in the bathroom and then they're knocking on the door, and now my adjusting suite's on one side, and then it's like almost a horseshoe straight around, and the bathroom's on the far other side. And so now people that are coming into my space, I'm kind of honoring it more as more of a quiet space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was younger in practice, I wanted it really kind of, and I don't want it creepy quiet. I wanted a hum. Like I always wanted a hum. I don't want creepy quiet, but I also just don't want it to be so crazy loud, because it's just hard. It's just hard because we want it. Especially nowadays, everything's just about like dialing things down.
What have you chosen as far as kind of music in the office? Is that something that you don't have? Where does that fit in?
Well, and it's funny, I was in where we were in Fort Lauderdale probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and we were with a friend on a boat going through these canals, looking at all these big huge ships and these big yachts. And they were listening in Canada, we have called Sirius XM radio. And there's a channel called Chill. And it was kind of like the music that I like is when you're hanging out with friends, and we would have done this in San Francisco, you're in a lounge.
Yes.
And it has this lounge music in the back where it's a little bit funky.
Yes.
To just to kind of spark up conversation, but it's not like you're not going to be doing dance music. And it's also not like you're in a spa. So it doesn't feel like you're getting a massage, but it just sort of stays right into that kind of chill music. But I love to have that music in the background.
Yeah, I've always found music really important for me in practice. And depending on my mood, and if I wanted to kind of elevate it, or sometimes if I wanted to kind of, depress it as well, if I wanted to kind of bring things down, that we would often, because as a general rule, we would play a lot more kind of upbeat music. But I did notice that when we went almost more spa, meditation-y, yoga-y type sort of stuff there too. My patients on the table, they would lie there beforehand. They would always comment on that. Oh, this is lovely. I find it relaxing. Whereas they would never comment on the other stuff there as well. I often think about that now as well. Is there anything else in your practice that was a part? So, a lot more space for your staff, the sound as well. With regards to colors and things like that too, you've talked about kind of more neutral colors. Was there anything specific that you wanted to achieve with those at all?
You know what? Brandi picked them out, but I really liked it. It was like they're grays. So we teasing it. It's like the 50 Shades of Gray. So we have a bunch of different grays in our office.
Yes.
but it's like a blue, like it's a blue tinge throughout that. So even instead of having white walls, it's like a white gray that's kind of that has a blue tinge to it. And I didn't do that on purpose. It's just that the way that she picked those colors, they're just we get a lot of comments on that too, just that how the colors just are kind of just warm. I guess you'd just say they're warm. And and so we are kind of more like the it was kind of like we had beige with a dark green wall and kind of like solid stuff. And now it's kind of like gray, blue, but just different tones of that.
Yes.
Um, and then we just try to we haven't got all of our artwork up yet, but we're just trying to get some nice artwork up, which is again canvas, which absorbs sound, just because
Yes.
sound is such an important thing.
And then tell me about your artwork too, because I find it interesting that what sort of art, because you say artwork, and I'm assuming that's different from chiropractic posters
Yeah,
or,
yeah, it is. Like I'm going away from a lot of like, because before my previous practice used to be just chiropractic posters through the whole thing. And I'm kind of, I do have them in my, like, because I have a new patient room, and I have one more private room just in case, like if you have a busy office and someone comes all flared up or something. You like to have a holding tank room, because if you're running off a couple tables and someone comes in and in a crisis, it kind of blows up the day. So I still have some of the posters in there, but like in my adjusting suite, I found these on Amazon, but they're, because we really like to focus on the brain.
mm,
That's kind of, kind of the new model of chiropractic that we're talking about with the adaptability of the brain. There's just these artwork colors with like the brain and like butterflies. And so we just got these cool canvases that we'd order. I found them on Amazon, and they came from China. So they took like 4 weeks to come over, but they're beautiful. And we've got a lot of comments on them. And
mm,
then, and a lot of chiropractors that we work with too have actually had those paintings with the right brain, left brain, and just talk, and how they have like all the analytical stuff off the left, and then all of the art stuff off the right, and just kind of, just demonstrating the beauty of the body and how the nervous system works.
mm. How have your patients been receiving the practice so far?
They love it. Like they're like, and it's just I think because we've built it, it just basically has our energy all over it. The only one, I got one complaint, and it was my oldest patient. She's 95 years old currently. And she complained at it because we didn't have our sound baffling in yet. And so it
Yes.
was really echoey. And then, so she sat in the front, and then the thing about our old office is we're so close. So she had a little hard time hearing. She could actually stay engaged through it. And so she told me right off the bat she didn't like it because it was too big, and it was not warm, and it wasn't very friendly. So it was funny because I said, well, it's cozy back here. She says, well, it's always cozy to see you, but that was just my opinion at the front. And I said, well, we're working on that. So she's due back here next week, so we'll see how she likes it now that we have the nice throw rugs and the baffling in the ceiling and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully she likes it better. But besides one person, everybody's loved
Right.
it.
And you've talked about how much that this has reinvigorated both yours and Brandy's energy as well. Has that translated into being busier at practice, more new patients, people coming out of the woodwork, so to speak?
Yeah, and it's funny because we've been so busy. Normally, if you'd move, we do like a big mail out, or we do like a text message blast and tell everybody we moved, and we haven't really done that. We've like we're running some Facebook ads, but like really we're just doing what we've normally done, and we are. Like it's just the energy. It's almost like you have the universe hoards a vacuum, right? And so we have bigger room, like it just seems like it fills up. And then the other great thing about it too is that when we're busier and we got a lot, and you have more space, it doesn't feel as busy,
Mm,
because when you have a really small place, like it is good and efficient, but you get 8 people that are sitting like side by side in the front, it feels like you're like it's crazy and it's full. And then if you have 8 people in this just huge open area, like they feel like it's not that big of a deal. So it's funnier is that it feels less busy, even though it is busier. And again, we've just finished the first month of practice. So I'm sure just our excitement level too, that's going to attract more people as well.
mm. One of the things, when I'm talking about strategies to help people grow their practice, one of the things I often talk about is give your practice a lick of paint.
Mhm.
Pop some new carpets in, buy some new pieces of furniture. And every time I have done that in my practice, and we try to not let it go much more than 2 years before, freshening up in some way there too. Whenever we would do that, it was quite remarkable how much busier it would get afterwards. I would notice also sometimes that we would do regular screenings on a weekend, and invariably, for whatever reason, let's just say that it was incredibly rainy and it was an outdoor fair, and we didn't get a lot of interaction there too. We would notice in the subsequent weeks after, new patients would just come from nowhere, that there seemed to be this relationship between putting energy and investing energy in the practice, whether it be with a new paint and or out at the screenings there too, that just returned, and it wasn't always direct. And you've talked a lot about that. What is that about? Like, if you were to try and explain that to somebody that might be a little more left brain, what's that about, do you reckon?
Oh, we can't just go on the woo-woo.
I'm up for it. I've got no other way than default to the woo-woo.
It's so easy. It's so much easier to explain. You put it in the universe and it just comes back. Yeah, and that would be easy to explain.
Yeah.
But I think it's intention. And, you know, like, I think when we know our body puts off cues all the time, and we're sending off messages that are not on a conscious level to the people around us all the time. That's why people can tell if there's something wrong with you. You haven't said anything, like, you know, especially if you're tuned in with somebody, you can tell what's going on. And I firmly believe it's focus. Like, I think you were just talking about too, when you work with clients and they start to do a 9-day program, like before they even start, like things start happening because you're kind of getting your ducks in a row in your mind. It's almost like if you're going to buy a red car, you're looking for cars and you're like, hey, I'm going to research into this. When I was getting my Hummer, I was looking for this certain type of Hummer, and then you'd see it everywhere. And you never saw it before, and they were still there. It's just that you didn't see them. And so I think it's sort of the same thing. You know, when I was first in practice, they used to always call it tickle the files. Did you ever hear about that?
Yes.
Where you'd go through it. If this is when you're first in practice and like you don't know what to do and you're not marketing anything, and so you can tickle the files. So you just go through the files and go, boy, I haven't seen John for a long time. Oh, I haven't seen like Mary. I wonder how she's doing. And then all of a sudden she'd phone in or something like that. So, actually, and it's so funny. Again, just how these weird things happen is that I had a practice member that hadn't been in for about 4 years. And the funny thing about it, I didn't check my schedule, and this just happened about 2 weeks ago. And I was working on someone, and they're talking about, can chiropractic help with sinuses? And then she always give the old adage, like, well, chiropractic doesn't really treat anything, but like if we can always work with the physiology, and often if physiology is not functioning at optimal, that sometimes can help. So I'm working on sinuses, and then I told her it was this story about this pharmacist who gave me the gears, like when I was first in practice, just gave me the gears forever about how chiropractic was quackery, and like asked me 500 questions about it and didn't believe in it and all this stuff. And once he was under care, for a long time, he was always like, can you work on my sinuses? And then I'd always tease him and I'd say, like, why would I work on your sinuses if this is quackery? Like, I would kind of throw it back at him. And so I told him this story, and it just happened that this practice member of mine had gone through kind of a hard time in his life. And so I hadn't seen him for about 3 years. And he seriously was the next patient that came in, and I didn't even look at the books, and I hadn't even seen him for about 3 years. And I just told a story about him, and he was like, right, like, which is just weird. Who knows? He came, and then it reminded me, or I was thinking of him, and it brought him. Who knows? It's the woo-woo.
It's I think it's in the book Sapiens. I often think about that this could possibly explain some, if we think about kind of human evolution, whilst we're in this kind of Homo sapien version as well, there's been a longer version as Homo sapiens where we haven't had language than where we have had. And when you and I were hanging out as hunter-gatherers, obviously there was a way that we were able to communicate when there was danger. There was food this way, that way, and we didn't do it in the words like you and I are doing now. And we built up generation after generation of generation of there being subtle communication ways. And so I think if we've had longer communicating without words than we have words, there's something about us that understands that. And I wonder that when we invest in our practice, we put energy towards it, that there is a physiology change that says that we're excited about this. And, I remember John Demartini saying that people will travel for miles to watch you burn. That when there is something about that, now whether or not that level of physiology change is able to travel further than, because I get that if you were to see me, that there are parts of you that are picking up all of this without me being here, but it does seem to be non-local as well, which blows my mind of the number of times those same kind of experiences that, the next patient that turns up as well. I'm a big fan of in all things, the power of new and different. And you're seeing some of that with the practice as well. One of the things I really wanted to talk with you about today too is the different communication models that you have in around what chiropractic is, how it helps. In particular, I hear you and Brandi talking a lot about polyvagal theory. Can you bring our listeners up to speed in terms of how that imbues your practice and your model of how you communicate chiropractic?
Yeah, I think like in the past, it's probably like most chiropractors, they go to coaches or go to seminars, and then they learn about different scripts on how, like, this is the best report of findings. It'll give you the best return on your investment. You'll get the most people that choose lifetime care and all that. And just again, we really look into personality styles. Me and Brandi created a program called the Vitality Shift, and it's really about creating those unique conversations about chiropractic in the first and second visit, like you'd have in a conversation. Like, you'd be a pretty boring human if you just said the same thing to every single person all the time, no matter. And we've all met those people in our lives who are talking to us about stuff that we couldn't give two shits about, and they can't pick up on that. And you're just trying. And Jim Rohn always said, "Do not mistaken consent for courtesy." Or sorry, consent for courtesy, because they're not consenting that you tell them all their stuff. They're just being courteous.
Yes.
And it's nice to be able to pick up on those cues. So we kind of broke our communication styles into kind of four more main areas. And one was is personality style. Like, depending on someone's personality style is how they like to communicate, whether they like more data, or they like more feeling, whether they like to have a good time, or they just want to get to the point, right? And so being able to kind of tailor that a little bit. The second thing we like to talk about is I call it the chiropractic love languages. And it's basically, I took it from the book, The Love Languages, where people like to display or receive love in generally 5 different areas. And so I tried to find entry points, because what I found is I used to tell people everything about chiropractic on the first 2 visits, and then that would be it. And I thought that that would be good for them to stay under lifetime care. But we realized that they would forget about 90% of everything they said on the first 2 visits. So I wanted to make sure that I talked about, because people remember stuff that's relevant to them.
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure I kind of narrowed it right down. And so we broke those love languages down into posture, and into stress, and then into function. And so if I can figure out what would be the most valuable for this person to have improvement in, whether it's posture, because some people just don't like the way they look, and people will come in because I don't like the way I look. Yep. They come in because they are not happy with their level of function, and they're also not happy with the results of being sympathetic dominant. And I always have that as a circle with subluxation right in the middle, because they're all linked together, and they all basically mean the same thing when we learn about it in the holistic view of chiropractic. But people just need to kind of find out, how is that related to me? And so that's just a little bit easier way to do that.
How do you identify, is there a process that you have in place to identify whether somebody is analytical, data driven? Are they more emotional? Their conversations there too. What's your process of finding that out, first of all?
It takes a little while. But again, it's just like anything. If you've practiced, you'll get a lot better at it. The easiest way to do is look at their intake form.
Yes.
So if they figured out how to use, like, we still do paper files on the first visit, and if they figure out how to edit PDFs and like do all these kind of crazy drawing and all these graphics and stuff, I'm just like, wow, probably analytical. Like they love all that stuff. Yes. If they hardly filled anything out, they probably want to just talk to you about it, or they could be more, just straight to the point. And then often, once you just notice someone's physiology too, just like when you introduce yourself, the speed of the way they move, the directness of the way they talk, the energy that they give off, it's pretty easy to be able to pick that up. Like once you are aware of it, it does take a little while at the beginning to practice. And so, and then sometimes too, we'll even get our staff, because we train our staff up on this, and then they can give you heads up on it as well. But I think if you're a really good communicator, like if you're pretty empathetic, like an empath, where you kind of connect with people, you probably do this on default, like probably to a point where you actually only focus on their energy, and you forget about what you're trying to say. But we always want to make sure we have that balance between kind of honoring them, and then we want to also kind of honor what we have to share, but in in a language that they would understand that would be a benefit for them.
Yeah. I love the saying that when all else is even, we like doing business with people that we like.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for likability. And in essence, there's a level of arrogance and ego about it there too, that we do just like people like us. And so therefore, if we can show up and match the energy of the people, of our patients, meet them where they're at, and then, just model and mirror what they're doing there too, it's a great way to connect with people. Can you give me some examples of, this framework in around kind of posture, stress, and function, where somebody might come in and let's just say that, because they're putting down your initial consultation that let's just say they're having headaches, and where you might drive that towards posture and how that might drive to a different person towards stress, and then again a third towards function.
Yeah, we just ask how's this affecting your quality of life? And then we'd also, what we've done in the Vitality Shift is we do a lot of objective findings. So we like to because we want the subjective part of it, because we want them to tell us. And also when they explain things too, you'll be able to pick up on that. And then often I'll throw in stuff basically almost 100% everybody comes in with poor posture, especially now, the pandemic, and everybody's stuck at home sitting in a desk. Forward head posture is insane. It's basically everywhere. And so we say, oh yes, they say I got headaches. I said, yeah, I noticed you notice your shoulders roll forward. And they're and then I just wait to hear what they say. And if they say, oh no, I didn't know that, then that's probably not one of the main reasons they came in for that, even though that's happening.
Yes.
Right. Or they'll say, yeah, I know, people have been telling me that my whole life, but every time I try to sit up straight, it's uncomfortable and I can't. And so now I'm already narrowing it down. Right. And then we also, you can see if they're a mom, then you can kind of take some generalities first, but then ask some more questions to see if it's right, because they might want to be there. They might be more concerned about a mother's more tendency to be maybe tired and aren't being able to give the clear attention to their children, and they feel kind of burnt out. So we're going to be drifting towards stress. But forward posture still is flexor dominant, so we can still link it through to posture as well. If someone's yeah, and it's just as hard for me to concentrate at work, and I can't get things done, then we're thinking, oh, we're probably moving towards some function. And when the head is forward, then that means that the spine's not talking to the brain. And when the spine's not moving, the brain's not being lit up. So then you can't be effective at your job. And so we're trying to there's so many benefits to having proper physiology and a spine that works properly. It's our job to be able to quickly decipher what not function would be resulting, that would be causing the discomfort or the challenges that they're having currently.
Some of the times when I've asked those questions to try and find out how is this impacting people's life, there's a certain portion of people that draw a blank on that. It's affecting my life because I've got this fucking headache. That's what more do you want to know? It's that, where do you go with those people that might not at this stage have the emotional connection that their headache is stopping them being the dad they want to be, the mum they want to be, the worker they want to be, stopping them golfing?
Yeah, well, within the first few minutes, I'm also going to try to anticipate if they're open or if they're even aware. Right. Yes. Sometimes they're not open to be aware. Right. And they're no, it's just that. And then if they keep feeding back, then I'm almost going to say, okay, well, let's just do some of these tests, because they say, no, I have nothing wrong with anything else. It's just I have a headache and I just want you to fix that. Everything else is perfect. And I'm great, let's do these functional tests, because you should rock all these out. And they'll totally fail on them. Right. So it's almost you bring them into the awareness. Or some people, then I kind of, you start to pick up on this, but you pre-frame what they might be experiencing.
Yes.
And I'll just be saying, you know what, someone like you with the history that's been going on and with what's going on, you might notice that you're just not sleeping as well. And you might notice you're just a little bit more foggy in the head, or if they're really roll forward, sometimes your arms go to sleep at night, or you'll start throwing out some stuff. And that really gets their attention as well, when they're yeah, because if you can bring up stuff that's not even what they're saying, but they've experienced it, they're oh no, I forgot, I didn't even put that down, but that's totally going on. And what we're trying to do is link this all together as a global system. And I don't know if it's like this in Australia, but in Canada, it gets so bad that when they go to their medical doctor, we have a sign. Most medical doctors have a sign, and they say, you are limited to one complaint per visit.
Oh, wow.
So if you have two complaints, you have to book a separate appointment for that complaint. And so which when the medical field does that, it also is good for us, because I say, no, actually, we are going to link these together, because many times what you're experiencing, so someone has poor posture, if they're flexor dominant, if they're in a chronic stress response, they're going to have multiple different symptoms that are all related to the same thing.
Yes.
And we're not treating the symptoms, but we're trying to help optimize the same thing that's affecting all those.
Yeah. I think we have a great mutual friend in Martin Harvey. And,
Yes.
One of my favorite sayings is never tell somebody when you can show them. And I've had numerous conversations with that about Martin and the work he does. And I know from working with many people that have worked with you and Brandi in the Vitality Shift too, that you're a huge fan of an examination that actually educates somebody along the way, and some of the tests that you can do to have people experience what it's like to have a nerve system not working properly. Can you share some of those exams, the things that you do, and perhaps how chiropractors could start to implement them into the practice to start to see some of these type of aha moments happening without them having to say anything?
Yeah, and I call it just a postural tension test, and I like to do this before their first adjustment, because what we're typically finding is a lot of people who have been subluxated for a long period of time, because their spine's not moving, their spine's not talking to their brain, and so their brain has become disassociated to their body, and so often they will feel like the worst thing that they're experiencing when they come in, but they're not aware of the rest of it. So I just have them go straight up against the wall, shoulders back against the wall, head against the wall, heels against the wall, butt against the wall. And I push their shoulders right back. And I said, now, in order to have optimal posture, you need to have strong extensor muscles. And in order to have strong extensor muscles, you must be able to regularly fire them. And you will only regularly fire them if you can comfortably stand up against the wall. And so I have them stand up against the wall, and I just have them, as an awareness exercise, go through the neck, shoulders, chest, all the way down, just to tell me any areas of discomfort, awkwardness, tension. I'm not looking for pain. I'm just looking for, is that just not like in a state of ease? And I make them stand there for a bit. And it's an awareness exercise that as they stand there, often they will start to kind of open up windows to different parts of their body. And they're like, oh, and I feel this, and I feel this, and I feel this, and I feel that. And then after our adjustment, I will just redo it again after the first adjustment.
Yeah, nice.
And they will just know an immediate difference. Because it's funny also, when I first was getting coached by chiropractors, sometimes they said, you don't want them to have too much improvement at first, because then they're going to quit as soon as they feel better. Right. And so I was like, oh, okay, we don't want that. But then if they don't feel better or notice any change at all at the beginning, then they don't standard care long enough to be lifetime care anyway. So I'm like, so let's do both. Let's see some immediate change, but then also pre-frame what it's like to have sustained ease. So that's always what we talk about, immediate ease, and then sustained ease once they get on their care plan. So that's just one example. We should do some balance stuff. We do the CLA substation, which is always, I've done that since I was in beginning practice with surface EMG, thermography. HRV is great because that's, we talk about segmental subluxation and then global subluxation. Yes. And global is more of that stress response, and the HRVs are really, it's a nice example to kind of open up that conversation.
The one that I started doing and only really did in the second half of my practice was a Fukuda's as well, which I think sometimes you guys might call, do you call it a Fukuda's? Do you know what a Fukuda's? Eyes closed, marching, sometimes called like maybe a marching Trendelenburgs as well, or something like that.
Yeah, with hands straight out is.
Yes.
Yeah, so we call it like a Middle-Myers return test. Like, I guess it's just named different things depending.
Yeah. But this is because when I have gone through my exam and posture, and we're talking lots of these similar things of, constantly, I think it's so interesting. I'm going to roundabout way to go about this. In my early days in practice, when I would start with a patient out in the back, they would sit down and I would say to them, and it's almost embarrassing, I would say this now, and this was a script that I got from somebody, I won't mention the person's name, but it was, hey, Don, before we start today, I want to tell you a little bit about what we do here at the practice. So already I'm making the first visit about me. And I know what it's like. We go along to a doctor or someone, we've kind of rehearsed in our head what we want to say and what's going on there too. And already I've said it's about me there too. And then I took the whole direction of this is what's important to me and here, and let's not talk about this and that. But anyway, as my practice began to evolve and I understood many of the concepts we're talking about today, and I no longer got scared about talking about people's symptoms because I was able to link them more globally to function and have them understand this process as well,
Yep.
constantly linking back and forwards and as well. The thing that I would finish, the final test I would do is say, look, I want to see, again, the best way for me to communicate, see how your brain and body is communicating is we're going to do this test here. And I'm going to just stand there, eyes closed. Okay, your job is to march right on the spot there. If you feel like you're going to fall over, then open your eyes. If I think you're going to fall over, I'll tell you to do the same thing there too. 15 to 20 seconds is all they do. And so they'll march. I know you've done this a lot of times, but for chiropractors that haven't done this with your patients, please do this tomorrow or this afternoon as well. They will spin around, they will walk forwards. And when somebody opens their eyes and you're then standing creepily right in front of them, it's a huge aha for them to like, what happened there? And it's like, that's what happens when your brain and body is no longer communicate. This visceral experience of what subluxation is, of what a nervous system that's not working great. Me too, I have always used the subluxation station, but it doesn't give that same, it's pretty colors and all those kind of things. That's part of the exam, but I don't get to experience the same way. That I love that idea of standing against the wall there, or a Fukuda's test, or these different functional tests where I can experience it as well. That then allows us to kind of link things beyond their symptoms moving forwards. Where does this come into? Because you've talked about sympathetic dominance, and that's a word that's a lot more common now in the last 3 or 4 years, and starting to become more common again. I feel like the next evolution of this is going to be some kind of polyvagal type sort of conversation that we as chiropractors are having. Can you explain the polyvagal theory and then how that relates to what we do as chiropractic, and then how you communicate that to your patients?
Yeah, well, that's a big question.
Yes.
That's awesome. So polyvagal theory is pretty cool, because I think the first time I heard about the stress and the parasympathetic was like with James Chestnut, and then I did some more work with Dr. Michael Hall, and it was funny because at that time I was more like, we need more chiropractic research, or how do we do this more chiropractic, specifically why chiropractic works. And Michael Hall was like, that is important. We do need that, but there's already lots of research on how physiology already works, and chiropractic is just like a tool of how to optimize physiology, right? And also Genome, before she passed away, we had some really great conversations with her, and she's about chiropractic, about optimizing physiology, just getting back to optimum physiology. Like it's not crazy. And then you get into polyvagal theory, and it's just like, well, it just takes it to a new level, because basically polyvagal theory just talks about as humans evolved into mammals, we developed a frontal lobe, which also we developed a ventral vagal. So in the past, you had your stress response, and then you had the old vagus nerve, which is the dorsal vagus. And so what would happen is in a state, you'd always be scanning for a state of threat. So you'd always be scanning for a state of threat. If the threat was manageable, you'd fire a stress response and you'd fight or run.
Yes.
And if you got into an area that was too bad, it would be like playing dead. Dorsal vagal would kick in and it would just collapse everything. And you'd play dead, hopefully, to survive. Because if you fought, it would be more dangerous than just playing dead. Mm-hmm. And so as mammals evolved, the whole goal for mammals evolving is to become more social, so that we can collaborate, so that we can evolve. Mm-hmm. And the only way we can do that is the body evolved with the ventral vagal, which now the ventral vagal is the one that helps to dampen down the stress response. I just did a podcast interview with Dr. Stephen Porges on my podcast. And he said, it's so funny because the whole thing that makes us mammals is the ability to dampen the threat response. Like that's what makes us, that's what helps us evolve.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm like, and the more you dive into this, like I'm just like, that's why chiropractic works in this, and that's why chiropractic does this, and that's why chiropractic does this. And the funny thing is, when I did my interview with him and I was talking about what we see in chiropractic, like it was actually surprising to him. And that's why he reached out to us and said, well, let's do a program together, because the polyvagal theory, and there's so many different terms and things that they describe that we see in chiropractic, but we have a hard time explaining, but it's already been pre-researched. Like he has like 3,000 research studies. It just goes over this theory, and chiropractic is under that umbrella of polyvagal. But I believe chiropractic is just one of the quickest things to get the body into that safety response. And when you get an adjustment, it's basically the vagal brake, where it stimulates the ventral vagal, which helps to dampen down the stress response, which helps to restore physiology back to that healing state.
And is, to nerd out a little bit here, is the chiropractic adjustment doing that through, for lack of better terms, a stimulation of mechanoreceptors, cerebellum, James Chestnut sort of model, anterior temporal lobe through there and less nociception? Or how is the adjustment per se stimulating that kind of more ventral vagal process?
I think it's both. I think it's all of them. I think we're getting movement back into the spine in areas that have been immobilized, right? Because it's almost like the ventral vagal. If you have a dorsal collapse, it collapses the whole system. But it's almost like parts of our body go into dorsal collapse. So like parts of the body get stuck. Mm-hmm. And so through the chiropractic adjustment, you increase proprioception, which increases your body awareness of where you are in the present moment. Mm-hmm. Which allows you to realize if it's safe or not, because often we store old trauma in our body. And if our body's not moving, the body's remembering the trauma. And so it's doing the trauma response and it's not even in that position anymore.
Yes.
And even just opening up a rib cage. So again, all the ventral vagal things are breathing, facial expressions, connecting. And really, once you go into this, the polyvagal theory, it really shows how important it is for us chiropractors to look after ourselves, because if we're in that stress state, we're giving off that neuroception danger, which will prevent them from dialing down. So the more relaxed you go into the adjustment, the more you look at them straight in the eyes, the more that you have facial expression, the more that you talk with them in a calm tone while you do the adjustment to put the body in ease, the more it stimulates the ventral vagal, the more of a release on that stress response you get, the more they go into a state of safety.
Yes. And so the idea being that with this massively flexor dominant posture that we have, let's just say that's not an emotionally stressful environment, which obviously it's physically stressful at the moment there, which then drives that stress response. And so even from a mechanical point of view, if we're helping people get back into a more extensor dominant posture, they're driving that fight flight just posturally, let alone what's happening emotionally in this very tricky world that we're in at the moment as well. Is that a fair kind of suggestion?
100%. And like he said, like even Dr. Porges said, it's ventral vagal. So when we open our belly and we open our organs and our chest and our heart, we're in more of a safety mode. And that's why the next step after getting into safety. So first of all, we want to get rid of the cues of danger. Yes. Right. Which is also posture's cues of danger, but that's your brain is picking up on your own cues of danger. We also want cues of safety. And so that's why it's so important even to just co-regulate with the chiropractor and even the visit to the chiropractor with the adjust, like it's just everything together. That's why you could have two chiropractors adjust. And you probably have experienced this, that if you have someone adjusting you in a present moment with that calm energy, like it affects you differently than someone who's just kind of performing the physical thing.
Yeah, right back to kind of Parker's present time consciousness a moment as well. Lauren and I, my wife Lauren, who's a chiropractor as well, she does lots of amazing work with kids. And this concept, we have dived down the well of polyvagal beforehand, and it just gets way too complicated for me. How do you introduce that concept to your patients without overwhelming them? Do you introduce it to them? Are you using the word polyvagal, vagoventral? Are you using this kind of language, or where does that fit in?
Again, it totally depends on the person. It's funny because if you work with, and this is the thing about the polyvagal theory is it's going through into business, it's going into counseling, it's going into education. So if you have practice members that are teachers or therapists or psychologists, or even sometimes into business, they'll actually know what it is. And so you can ask questions about it. And if they've never heard about it before, then we just go back to simple things like, your body can be in two states. It can be in protection or growth, or protection or healing. And you can't heal when you're like this. And I've never had one person ever say, I disagree with you, I want to see research on that. Like it's just a conversation, which is just like a no-brainer. And if you can work on, and I always say, I rather than teaching brand new concepts to people that they don't have any clue about in the past, I like to dig a bit to find out what they already know, and then link what I'm talking to what they already know. And if you are good at anything, The habits and the things you must do to be good at those things, I can relate chiropractic to you. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've tried to be good at something, because that's what we're doing with your nervous system, is to help your body to regulate the autonomics better.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I love these conversations that can take somebody from where they are at the moment, meeting them when they come into us in some level of health crisis, where we don't have to say that we can't help you with that, and we talk nothing about symptoms whatsoever. We can take them from where they are now onto a journey that to me just seems wonderfully congruent as well. The one challenge I know that I certainly had with it is, often just baffling people, and that was something I had to work really hard on, that things that excited me, as you said beforehand, courtesy don't mistake courtesy for consent. When people look like they're getting excited about other stuff, they're like, yeah, this is all really good, but I want my headache to go, doc. So, what's your advice with that when you're talking and you and Brandi are coaching people? How do you keep on track with regards to making sure you're not overawing people?
Well, and again, this is being aware of who you're talking with. It's so funny because often we'll have the people we work with come back and they're having a challenge with a practice member who didn't get it. And then we'll ask them like 2 or 3 questions about the person and they don't know anything about them. And I'm like, you need to know like about them, right? Because they're never going to get it. I call it the spray and pray. The only way is if you spray this great script, sometimes it's going to stick. Yeah. Hopefully it sticks. But if you spend enough time to find out who that person is and find out what they would be excited about, because this is the thing, is that I get excited because I know I can link the polyvagal theory, chiropractic, properly functioning nervous system to anything that they want to do.
Yes.
And so what I want to do is I want to transfer my excitement into cheering them on what they want to do. Like, are they trying to run a marathon? Are they trying to lose some weight? Get into their relationship? Or like, what are they trying to do? And then be excited about it. And I always say, I like to break down the successes into little mini milestones, because to go from where some people come in to your office, an absolute mess. And for them to be optimal is going to take a long time. Yeah. And if we're going to wait till the end to celebrate, like most people don't have enough discipline to hang on for that long. So we need to break down all the little steps and celebrate like the 1,000 little improvements along the way. And I think my job always when I'm seeing a practice member is always bringing the awareness to their body. I always tell the chiropractors we work with, at first, sometimes the symptoms aren't as relevant when they're not aware of their body. But the longer someone stays under care, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've been under care since I'm 19, and your symptoms actually become more accurate the longer you're under care. And so I've been checked by a chiropractor and they go, "You're clear." And I'm like, I am not clear, dude. Like, I know I'm not clear. I know my body, and it's been under regular care for so long. I know I'm not clear. And I'm like, and it drives me crazy because they are just paying attention to their technique and their qualification, but they're not actually paying attention to me. And so I like to always have that balance and just realize that, you know what, the body is brilliant. And the more connected your brain is to your body, the more accurate that information is going to be. And for an experiment, I took some people who'd say, no, I think there's something here, or there's something blah, blah. And I would just listen to them. And I went and I researched more in there. I said, do I need to just hold that state and just like, let it just breathe out some tension out of that area? And they were happy. It just made the biggest difference in the world. But it's when people have been under care longer, we need to trust how they feel instead of just saying, I don't want to hear how you feel. Because feeling is also not like it hurts here. Feeling is more like, I feel lighter. I feel like I am tired, which is good. I feel more relaxed. Like those are the feelings that we're trying to kind of generate after an adjustment. And that's basically that immediate state of ease after.
I was lucky enough to have a one-on-one coaching session, which I kind of won more or less, with a guy who's sold more than $1 billion worth of information online, an extraordinary guy. And I was talking to him a little bit about he didn't know a lot about chiropractic. I was explaining some of these sorts of principles to him. And he said, I'll tell you the problem, Angus, that I see with chiropractic. And he said, I want you to imagine that there's two islands. He said, there's an island here full of chiropractors, and there's an island here full of all the people that you want to help. And you're on your island and you're yelling out to them, come over here. Life is so much better over here. We've got a new way of thinking about health, life, stress, relationships, you name it there too. He says, but the problem is those people on that other island, not only are they on another island, he says, but they speak a completely different language than what you do. And he said, you chiropractors aren't prepared to travel across to their island and communicate to them in their language and then invite them back to your island. And I thought that was profound. So often we say things, and I've heard people say things on stage, wonderfully charismatic chiropractors as well, that sound really cool when we're around a bunch of chiropractors and we all poke each other in the ribs like, yeah. That is rubbish. I'm like, that's not true at all. I think, you shouldn't be listening to your patients when they're complaining about the symptoms. You're the doctor. These type of things there also. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to go about it. I was always a fan of somebody were to say to me, Angus, it still hurts here. Let me check again. I'm not a perfect chiropractor. Maybe I have missed something. I check again. Yeah. And then sometimes I have to eat some humble pie and I go, you know what, actually, Don, there's a little bit more work for me to do. Let's do that too. And then also to have the confidence to go, no, Don, we're cool. And then, totally. And then there were different ways I go. If it was, I would go, look, Don, let me check in with you later on this afternoon as well. Or come back again this afternoon if you're worried about that. There are these different ways to go about it. But what I like about, right from the very start of the way that you've designed your office through the conversations that you're having is that what you and Brandi are doing are wanting to go to the people, meet them where they're at. Is this a driver? Is this an analytical person? How can I communicate in their language there too? How can I then start to link that to these bigger things, which is starting to build a bridge back over onto the chiropractic island and then invite them over there? I've always been, Don, such a huge fan of the way you and Brandi have gone about things, the space that you've held in this profession and continue to have held as well. So thank you very much for that. If our listeners want to find out more about the Vitality Shift and the polyvagal work that you're going to be doing in 2022 and more of the brilliance that you guys do, how do they go about that?
Well, the best way is they can go to our website. It's thevitalityshift.com, and we got some free resources that they can kind of just check on there. Our program, the Vitality Shift, we open it just maybe once or twice a year. And again, it's just like an online program, and then we have some programs after that. The polyvagal program that we're going to be doing, we're going to be recording it with the Polyvagal Institute, and it will be available through the Polyvagal Institute for chiropractors. They are trying to create programs for all the different professions under the umbrella of the Polyvagal Theory, which is going to be really cool because then there's going to be a lot of collaboration. And that's the whole idea, right, of getting into a state of safety, is to be able to collaborate and evolve. That's our goal of mammals, is to evolve. And you can only do that in a state of safety, in a state of connection. So we're pretty excited to be doing that. And then people can just find me on Facebook and friend me on Facebook, and also listen to my podcast. It's the Vitality Shift podcast for chiropractors. And I want to thank you too, Angus, too, because like we want to grow our brand of chiropractic, and so we need people who are broadcasting this far and wide around the world, because it's funny, we've seen so many chiropractors where you have that, they have that little flame and then you light it on fire and then you leave them and they don't lose that. Like once you get rolling, you don't unlearn it. It's just that I think a lot of chiropractors have never been exposed to it and never really understood it. And if they do, by hearing something like this, that can make a huge difference, not only in our profession, but in the world, since the world is just pounding through people that are living in a state of threat. Like it's just creating we can't handle what this world is creating right now. Like it's job security. If you're a chiropractor, job security, you never have to worry about it again after this pandemic.
I believe that there's never been, whilst there are some real challenges at the moment everywhere, and with different principles, values in around chiropractic as well, with what we're being asked to do and consider and stuff like that too, the need for us to care for our patients is greater than ever. And the number of people in their droves that are scratching their head going, there's got to be a different way to this. That is growing in droves as well. So, buddy, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll make sure I have all of those links in the show notes. For those of you that are not spending time checking out Don and Brandi's work, please do it. This is just a touch of their brilliance. So, buddy, I hope it's not another 5 years until I get to see you again.
This time when we go to San Francisco, we'll know that remember the Golden Gate Bridge? We thought it was someone painted it, because we were like, I thought it was red. And we were like taking pictures in front of it, and it was like the wrong bridge. Oh, that was funny.
The worst. A couple of ridiculous, because Martin there too, two stupid Aussies and a Canadian. So
not knowing what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I do think about that often. So
that was fun.
Yeah, love it, buddy. Have a brilliant afternoon. Please pass on my regards to Brandi. See you soon, mate.
Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.